What if I told you that Jannik Sinner was secretly watching a young Spanish player in the middle of a match? While the world looked the other way? On the center court of the Mutua Madrid Open, something quiet yet impactful was happening. Sinner followed every shot, every point, every gesture from Rafa Jodar. Without him knowing. What exactly did he see in that 19-year-old to keep watching him? Stay with me, because this story goes far beyond a simple match. Rafa Jodar is delivering one of the most striking breakthroughs in Spanish tennis in recent years, establishing himself as an emerging figure in an increasingly competitive and demanding international circuit. At just 19, his presence at the Mutua Madrid Open was not initially surrounded by major media expectations, but his performance on the court has completely changed the perception. His ability to compete with intensity, intelligence, and determination has quickly placed him on the radar of fans and experts looking for the next big name in world tennis. The turning point came with his impressive victory over Alex de Minaur, a well-established top 10 player known for his consistency and speed on the court. Jodar didn't just win the match, he did so convincingly, with a scoreline of 6-3, 6-1 that left his opponent with no answers. This result reflects not only his current level, but also his enormous growth potential, as defeating a player of that caliber on such an important stage is far from common. Beyond the result, what truly stood out was the way Jodar managed every moment of the match, showing a maturity far beyond his age and tactical awareness worthy of much more experienced players. He knew when to take risks, when to stay calm, and how to capitalize on his opponent's mistakes without losing focus. This kind of on-court intelligence is what often separates promising players from those who go on to establish themselves at the elite level of professional tennis. Another key element in his development is his relationship with his father, who is not only part of his coaching team but also a fundamental pillar of his emotional stability. Having that trusted figure courtside gives him additional confidence in high-pressure moments, something that is clearly reflected in his performance. Jodar has openly acknowledged the importance of this bond, highlighting how it positively influences the way he approaches challenges on the professional circuit. The environment of the Mutua Madrid Open has also been decisive in this story. As one of the most prestigious tournaments on the calendar, the pressure and visibility reach extremely high levels. Adapting to the playing conditions, especially altitude and clay courts, requires a process that many players fail to complete successfully. However, Jodar used his opening match to fine-tune his game, which allowed him to arrive at tougher matchups with greater confidence. Finally, the support of the crowd has played a fundamental role in his performance, becoming a constant source of motivation throughout his matches. Playing at home, on a court as iconic as Manolo Santana, adds an emotional weight that can either lift or overwhelm a player. In Jodar's case, he has managed to channel that energy positively, using it as fuel to raise his level and deliver a performance already being considered one of the standout moments of the tournament. But while Rafa Jodar was shining under the lights and earning the crowd's recognition, a parallel story was unfolding in silence, away from the cameras and immediate media attention. In the stands, observing every detail of the match with near-surgical focus, was Jannik Sinner. His presence was neither announced nor noticed by Jodar himself, which makes the moment even more intriguing. The idea that a player of Sinner's level would dedicate time to watching a young talent inevitably sparks all kinds of interpretations within the tennis world. This wasn't just about watching another match, it was about analyzing, studying, and perhaps anticipating what could become a future threat on the circuit. Situations like this are not common, and when they happen, they usually signal that something special is beginning to take shape in a player's career. What's most striking is that Jodar had no idea he was being watched by one of the biggest stars in the sport, reinforcing the authenticity of his performance. He wasn't playing to impress anyone in particular, he simply stepped on court to compete and give his best. This naturalness is one of the most valuable traits in elite sport, where pressure can alter the performance of even the most experienced players. When he was later informed about Sinner's presence in the stands, his reaction was one of complete surprise, adding another layer of intrigue to the story. Moments like this often become symbolic milestones in an athlete's career, signaling that they are beginning to attract attention from the elite. It's as if the stage suddenly expands, and the player moves from being a local prospect to part of a much broader conversation within the global circuit. This episode also highlights a fascinating narrative about generational change in tennis, where established figures begin to closely observe those who may soon become their rivals. The possibility of a future clash between Sinner and Jodar is already generating excitement among fans, fueling a storyline that goes far beyond a single tournament. These invisible connections are what make sport so unpredictable and compelling. Meanwhile, Jodar remains grounded and focused on his next challenge, aware that every match represents both an opportunity and a test. His competitive mindset, combined with his talent and growing experience, positions him as one of the brightest prospects in Spanish tennis. And although he may not have known it at the time, being watched by Sinner could be just the beginning of a much bigger story. Rafa Jodar's journey at the Mutua Madrid Open is not just about an impressive victory, it marks a key moment where talent and opportunity intersect in unexpected ways. His rise is as rapid as it is solid. And in the middle of it all, that almost invisible detail of Sinner watching him leaves us with a clear idea: when the greats start paying attention, something very serious is about to begin. If this story impressed you, subscribe to keep discovering incredible moments in sport and leave a comment. Do you think Sinner saw a future rival in Rafa Jodar? Jannik Sinner once again showed why he is the world number one in his debut at the Mutua Madrid Open, securing a hard-fought victory after coming back from a set down against Frenchman Benjamin Bonzi in a demanding match. Although the result was positive, what truly caught attention was not just his performance on court, but his post-match comments about the absence of Carlos Alcaraz in upcoming major tournaments. His words reflected a mix of respect, competitive analysis, and a deep understanding of the impact of this absence on the circuit. Carlos Alcaraz's injury has forced the Spaniard to make the difficult decision not to participate in the Masters 1000 in Rome or at Roland Garros, two of the most important clay court events of the season. This news has caused a major stir in the tennis world, as Alcaraz is not only one of the most talented players of his generation, but also one of Sinner's main rivals. His absence completely changes the competitive dynamics and expectations of both tournaments. Far from seeing it as an advantage, Sinner made it clear that he does not view this situation as making things easier, but rather as a loss for the sport. He stated that tennis needs players like Alcaraz, capable of raising the level of competition and creating matchups that captivate audiences. This statement demonstrates not only sportsmanship but also an understanding of tennis as a global spectacle, where great rivalries play a fundamental role in its growth and appeal. Sinner also explained how Alcaraz's presence directly influences the way he approaches tournaments, noting that it changes how he analyzes draws and prepares mentally and strategically. Knowing he might face him in a final adds an extra layer of motivation. Without that possibility, the competitive landscape shifts, showing just how central their rivalry has already become in modern tennis. He also addressed the nature of injuries at a young age, acknowledging that physical setbacks are part of the journey for elite athletes. Rather than dramatizing the situation, he adopted a realistic and optimistic perspective, emphasizing that these pauses are part of a player's development in such a demanding circuit. Finally, he praised the decision to prioritize full recovery, reinforcing the idea that long-term success in tennis depends not only on talent, but also on smart scheduling and physical health management. For Sinner, this break is not a setback, but an investment in Alcaraz's future. One of the most striking aspects of Sinner's comments was his confidence that Alcaraz will return stronger than ever, a message that quickly resonated among fans and analysts. This reflects a deep understanding of recovery processes in elite sport, where forced breaks often allow players to address physical and mental aspects that go unnoticed during competition. The Italian also highlighted the complexity of wrist injuries, a particularly delicate area for tennis players due to its constant use in technical movements. These injuries require careful recovery to avoid long-term consequences. His analysis showed not only knowledge of the game, but also empathy toward his rival. Beyond the physical aspect, Alcaraz's absence also impacts the narrative of the tour, as his rivalry with Sinner has become one of the most compelling storylines in modern tennis. Each of their encounters generates massive anticipation due to both their level and contrasting styles. Without him, tournaments like Rome and Roland Garros lose part of that excitement. In this context, Sinner stands as a central figure on the tour, not only because of his ranking, but also due to his role as a competitive reference point. However, his words make it clear that he does not seek success at the expense of others, but sees it as something built alongside high-level rivals. Meanwhile, Alcaraz is expected to return at Wimbledon, a completely different surface that presents new challenges for his recovery and preparation. This strategic pause could allow him to come back stronger and better prepared, increasing his chances of competing at the highest level. Anticipation around his return continues to grow, fueled by messages like Sinner's. At the same time, Sinner remains focused on his own path this season, maintaining his usual preparation at the Caja Mágica and choosing not to train in alternative venues such as the Santiago Bernabéu. This decision reflects his disciplined approach and preference for consistency in familiar environments. Jannik Sinner's comments on Carlos Alcaraz's absence go beyond a simple reaction. They reflect a mature vision of tennis as both sport and spectacle. His respect for his rival makes it clear that the greatest stories are built between the best. And although Alcaraz will not be in Rome or Paris, everything suggests his return will be one of the most anticipated moments of the year. Because when someone like him pauses, it's often only to come back even stronger.